A split from the NCAA? Well, at least in college football, it's inevitable.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, a former staff member at Ole Miss and a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports. Today on the show, we talk about Keith Carter, who was on the podcast this past weekend, told Supertalk that he believes a split is inevitable. Corey Dennis, by the way, the analyst, has ended his vacation in Oxford, and the Grove Collective has announced a new campaign. We'll talk about all of that. Speaking of the Grove Collective, they're doing their March to Victory campaign this month. What does that mean? It's a new NIL campaign for Ole Miss Athletic, and their hope is to raise $10 million and 10,000 total members by the end of March. It's a March Madness types competition that puts regions of the U.S. in competition with each other for who can give the most money. And in the Sweet 16, which is going on right now, it ends March 18th. Let's keep Ole Miss Athletics at the forefront and go to thegrovecollective.com/March to Victory to help make it happen. The link is in the description, by the way. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available in all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On your first listen every day, and a special load of the everydayers that make the show what it is. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for $20 off your first purchase. Now, we had Keith Carter on the show this weekend. It was absolutely fantastic. Keith did a fantastic job as well. We broached the subject of the NCAA and the inevitable split, which I actually referred to it as this seems inevitable and how anxiety inducing this is. Well, Supertalk Mississippi had him on this week, and they put a video up recently to where they asked him the question flat out. They say, this inevitable that a split is coming. Do you believe that? And Keith Carter said, I do. This is a sitting athletic director at a Power 5 school talking about a split that he views as inevitable. Now, he went on to say that on Supertalk that he's not saying that this is imminent in the next couple of years. He thinks it's going to happen because of the disparity between football and all of the other sports. So there's people that are falling behind the wayside because of the amount of money that football is bringing in. And I completely agree. So he thinks that at least in college football, a split could be coming. Now, I talked to Keith over the weekend, and he said that, you know, it could be within the NCAA framework. It could be outside it, like the CFA type situation, but he believes a split is coming. And honestly, if you want to think about it, that's probably better for college sports. If you could get everything closer together and remove this outlier that is football. Now, granted, football is paying for absolutely everything in the athletic department. But if everything's kind of on similar footing, and we're going to talk about it in just a second, the disparity in athletic different groups inside the Power 5 and how much they cost and how much revenue they bring in, it's interesting. But if you have a situation where that disparity gets closed down to where men's basketball is kind of driving the ship revenue-wise, maybe they can coexist within the NCAA. Maybe those non-revenue and low-revenue type sports, they can exist within the NCAA. Because, you know, other than Kentucky, Duke, and North Carolina, basketball has never made a whole bunch of money. It just hasn't. Men's basketball, March Madness, that's fine, and that finances the NCAA almost entirely for their March Madness tournament. But for the athletic department, they're not very big winners. And if you want me to get inside baseball, there's a reason I'm 90% football on this show, on this channel, because we can put out perfectly good videos. Football will get 2,500 in season, roughly, views on a YouTube video. Basketball will get 500. Baseball will get 500. Women's basketball will get 200. That doesn't mean we don't do them. We still do extra videos because they need to be done. But people need to understand the disparity that actually exists in these sports. Now, people are talking about what the split could look like. And Andy Staples on 3, he put out a chart of what it can look like of the two conferences in the SEC and the Big Ten. Now, I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but it's very NFL. There's 48 teams listed of these super conferences, you might say. Some of them don't make sense. Now, the Big Ten has a big like AAU membership criteria, and they're just as big on that as the SEC is on having the most credentialed media members at Media Day. So some of these schools don't fit. Like the SEC getting Miami and Florida State in the Big Ten, culturally, that would be a flip. But that's not important. The important thing is there's 48 teams that they think at On 3 at Andy Staples and those guys think deserve a seat at the table. Now, are there going to be people excited and happy of what's going on? No, not everybody. It's not going to be completely uniform. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. Just because somebody's upset does not make it wrong. We have this view of society to where if one person is upset about everything's going on and 99 people are perfectly okay with it, it's a problem because that one person is upset about it. Well, in this situation, when you're talking about separating college football, okay, and having a situation to where, in this case, these 48 teams are the super conference, which, by the way, the Super League, that's kind of funny, a funny choice, Andy Staple. It's like a negative connotation because of soccer. Yeah, you have to be a deep cut on that one. But whenever these 48 teams get a seat at the table and the others do not, you can see somebody like Boise State, Tulane, Memphis, those type schools raising heck. Heck, we did a show yesterday about Joey McGuire mouthing off about Ole Miss over this exact thing, talking about auto qualifiers. Now, if Texas Tech knew that they were going to be in this when this final thing got done, nobody would be saying a dang thing. But as it sits, you know, you got to throw stones at Ole Miss, and Vanderbilt having a seat at this table is absolutely the most hilarious thing ever. But this is kind of what a college football super league would look like between the Big Ten and the SEC, and they divide it up. There, all the time zones are represented. I think Utah is in there. Is Colorado in there? I think in the Mountain Time Zone they might want to try and add somebody and take somebody out. So we'll see exactly how that goes as well. But this is kind of a framework of what it might look like with 48 teams in college football. Now, this is problematic because this is a net revenue graph over the last 15, 20 years in the NCAA. And you can see the disparity growing between football and everything else. And it's gotten to the point where basketball has kind of stayed on a flat line as far as net revenue. And they're, you know, making roughly close to $5 million a year, netting it. Football has gone from $12 million a year to nearly $30 million a year on average within the Power Five. And this is, I'm assuming, over what the Power Five was. Now, it's probably gone up even more since then, but this is that chart. Now, look at the other men's sports where they average losing about $6 million a year. If you look at women's sports, they're averaging losing about $12 million a year. Football is paying for it all. Football is paying for everything. What happens if football leaves the NCAA? What happens to these other sports? Are these other sports so valuable that we're honestly concerned about it? Or would we be perfectly fine if Ole Miss was considered a professional non-Title IX binding sport and the others fell into the Title IX bracket? Is that how we would feel? Because if football and their $30 million get taken out of the pie to where you do not have to donate in equal money to other members of your athletic department, and they won't, they're going to get a point. Somebody is going to lawyer up on that once they separate from the NCAA. What happens then? Is it a situation where the minimum sports that you're required to be Division I or Division II, that has to go away, right? And you could see a place at Ole Miss that has like 4 sports, maybe 5 sports. Other schools are going to pare way down. You're going to see U.S. Olympic trials and U.S. Olympic events go way down as well, because Title IX, whether everybody knows it or not, is one of the biggest boosters of intercollegiate Olympic type sports out there. And because of that, the Olympics get the benefit. Does the Olympics have to contribute to these Olympic level sports? This is all interesting to me. The split's inevitable. We saw exactly what it looks like, but the money might not be there, and Title IX is in very real jeopardy. By the way, Dartmouth basketball, they voted to unionize yesterday. There's so much going on within college athletics right now, so much, that I think we need to be really, really careful moving forward. Now, Ole Miss is handling it better than most. Ole Miss is handling the chaos very well. And because of that, we're seeing this renaissance of Ole Miss athletics. But at any point in time, the winds could change again. They're moving back and forth. They're moving all around. The problem with being an early adopter is sometimes you're going to guess wrong. So we'll see exactly how Ole Miss does. But Ole Miss leaving the NCAA, at least for college football, feels like inevitability, because Keith Carter believes that a split is coming. I'm not sure exactly what it'll look like, and I'm not sure exactly what the time frame will be, just that it's likely going to happen. So we'll see how that goes. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen of the day. Corey Dennis's vacation in Oxford is over, but that leaves questions about Husan Longstreet, and we talk about that next. With quick killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can see and view your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect before you arrive. All-in prices show your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. And you can buy tickets in 2 clicks. Click, click, you're there. You've bought them. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has the deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals, sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concert, comedy, theater, and more. And with zone deals, you can pick the section, and Game Time will pick the seats for extra savings. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON, all one word, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So Corey Dennis, who was hired, I think, last week as an analyst, and when he got let go at Ohio State because he's Urban Meyer's son-in-law, he got let go by Ryan Day. He ended up taking a job as an analyst at Utah. 17 days later, he moved on to become an analyst at Ole Miss. And 7 days later, he is moving on to be the quarterback coach and passing game coordinator at Tulsa University in Oklahoma. So is everybody following that? Hopefully they were able to pick his mind on some schemes and get ready for the Georgia game, and you can handle what was going on. And one of the recruiting benefits of Corey Dennis would have been Husan Longstreet, the quarterback out of Corona, California, that I think is supposed to visit in April. Good player. What is up with him now? Because a large portion of Husan Longstreet being interested in Ole Miss was Corey Dennis and his relationship with C.J. Stroud and all the Ohio State quarterbacks. What is the deal with him? Well, a little bit of a problem, but we'll start off with Bruce Feldman reporting that former Ohio State quarterback coach Corey Dennis, who has been at Utah and Ole Miss as an analyst recently, is getting hired by Tulsa as the passing game quarterback and quarterback coach. If you look at that, shortly after this news started popping on Twitter, this RPM prediction from Texas A&M goes up with Husan Longstreet being RPM'd. That's the on-3 version of a crystal ball to Texas A&M. Now, I don't know if I completely believe it. I don't know how trustworthy it is, but that popping up when it did, it might mean something because Husan Longstreet is not going to Tulsa. That's not going to happen. He's too good of a quarterback to do that. And the effect that Corey Dennis had is gone by going to Tulsa. Corey Dennis at Ole Miss, all of a sudden you have the Ole Miss thing, the status of that, and Corey Dennis there can assist with that. That raises Ole Miss's level. Now that Corey Dennis has gone to Tulsa, Ole Miss isn't in the same level to certain prospects, and it's going to be a harder recruitment. Now, Texas A&M and Texas and the big boys, they're going to recruit these guys at a very high level because that's what they do, honestly. But Ole Miss is going all in on Deuce Knight. Ole Miss, I think, is recruiting Emil Picarilla. Ole Miss is going in on some other quarterbacks as well. So Husan Longstreet, even though he popped in as somebody that is coming to the spring game, is not somebody that was locked in happening. It's the equivalent of the spring visitors they had a year ago. I mean, it's good that somebody from California is coming out to see the Ole Miss spring game, but it won't exactly look like it normally does, if that makes sense at all. Corey Dennis, I hope he enjoyed his vacation. I hope he didn't put a down payment down on a house. I hope he is ready to move on to the next level of his career, because 7 days, that's a rough thing. But hopefully, like I said, Ole Miss was able to talk some ball with this guy, which I'm assuming they did, to where Ole Miss was able to figure out some concepts that gave Georgia trouble a couple of years ago. To me, if you listen to my show, if you're an everydayer, you know that was the most important part of Corey Dennis coming to Ole Miss to me. And that was Corey Dennis and his knowledge of what Ohio State did against the Georgia Bulldogs in 2022. C.J. Stroud, all of those receivers. I mean, Ohio State very easily could have won that football game. What were schematically the Buckeyes doing that day? So interesting type stuff. And, there's a lot of stuff going on. Like I said, I'm not going to fault an analyst for wanting an on-field coaching job. I'm not. But Utah to Ole Miss to Tulsa in the span of about a month, that's a little bit much. And I think you deserve to be picked on for that. But I think Corey Dennis is going to be fine. Tulsa is going to be helped out a little bit. Now, I don't know if you want the Ohio State pass game quarterback coordinator last year, but the head coach at Tulsa was the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. So somebody that is familiar with what they were doing schematically is going to Tulsa to work with somebody that was the offensive coordinator until recently, honestly. Should be pretty cool. Still more to come on Locked On Ole Miss, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Grove Collective are starting a new campaign called March to Victory. We talk about it next. Passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is always guaranteed to fit your vehicle every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's guaranteed fit is only available to U.S. customers. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day, and shout out to the Everydayers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find the Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. Be part of history. Now, if you go to the description of this show, and that's whether it's on YouTube or whether you're watching it on one of your podcatchers somewhere else, just in the description, there's a link to the Grove Collective's campaign for March to Victory. March to Victory is the newest thing that Walker Jones and the people at the Grove Collective have put together, and it's a bracket-style challenge for donations over the course of March. I think March 18th-ish is the deadline for your first ever donation as far as a bracket style victory. And the whole point of this was to create regions to compete against each other in donating, and while Ole Miss is trying to raise money as well. And they have stuff on there where you can like be in Florida or North Texas and South Texas one. I think Mississippi is divided up into 3 regions. You know, the West Coast is all by itself. The Midwest is all by itself, but it's very specific in where Ole Miss fans live. And the whole goal is to raise $10 million in the month of March or 10,000 members in the Grove Collective as well. This is a pretty big deal. And I putting this up there for a reason. I'm advertising it for a reason. This campaign is not for this recruiting class. Okay. This recruiting class is spoken for. This recruiting class is kind of where it needs to be. But if we do what we want to do in football this fall, to where we're competing for playoff spots, we're doing things like that. The players that are being recruited last night, the Deuce Knights, the Caleb Cunningham, consensus 5-star player, the Kylan Deers, players like that, players in the transfer portal, the next Walter Nolan, the next Princely Amon-Mielen, the next Juice Wells, the next Jackson Dart. For Ole Miss to recruit those guys, they need to have capital to get that done. So Ole Miss, this campaign is raising money for the 2025 class and beyond. If Ole Miss can go towards a championship, specifically a national championship in 2024, for us to withstand what is going to go on. Ole Miss isn't Texas. They're not Texas A&M. They're not Georgia. They're not these other giant type schools that can just open up their wallet all the time. Now, they're better off than Mississippi State. They're better off than Vanderbilt. They're better off than Florida, if we're going to be completely honest. But they're, as Walker Jones said, they are small, but they're mighty. And right now, Ole Miss is punching above their weight. And it helps that they have somebody like Walker Jones that is leading this and constantly thinking of different ways to raise the capital necessary to do what they need to do. Ole Miss is getting creative. Ole Miss is figuring out ways to raise the money necessary, because this is the way this works, okay? About February every year, it gets known one way or another and it gets relayed up. It's like, hey, for next year, This year, we got everything we needed for about $12 million. What's that $12 million plus 15, 20%? Because it's going to be raised every time. And with Ole Miss getting memberships, which the 10,000 membership goal, that's the reason for that, that helps them with being able to plan these payments. Whenever you sign up for the HYDR plan of $21 a month or the powder blue plan of $42 a month, all the way up to like the superfluous plan of $50,000 a month or something like that. That helps Walker with the actual budgeting of what's going on. Campaigns like this is about raising money for future events. It's about realizing, hey, we have this many thing and this much money that we can get in a week or get in a course of a year through memberships. How are we going to make up the difference? And they're doing that through this campaign. So you can sign up if you're in Florida, you donate to Florida. And I think Realtree has a thing set up to where they will match a certain amount of your money as well. There's some promo codes that you can put on the checkout part as well. Ole Miss has a chance to be pretty interesting in this NIL space. And they are one of the most forward-thinking units in the entire country. I mean, they've truly done a breathtaking job in the start of NIL. While other schools are struggling, like I'm looking at you, Florida. I'm looking at you, Mississippi State. Ole Miss has not only figured this out, they understood it, but there's also figuring out different new creative ways that they can benefit themselves moving forward. While everybody else is just trying to get organized, okay? While they're trying to figure this NIL space out, Ole Miss is trying to figure out a way to do it more efficiently than they already are. And that is a cool deal. I'm very impressed, and I think that Walker is leading Ole Miss down the right way with the Grove Collective. He is also one of the front men of collectives in front of Congress, although I don't expect Congress to do anything because Congress doesn't do anything anymore. But they're trying. They're trying to figure out what's going on. So, as Keith Carter says, you either get told how things are going to be done, or you can be involved in shaping how things are going to be done. And Ole Miss at all levels, they're shaping ways that things are going to be done, whether it's the inevitable split from the NCAA by college football or even other sports, the NIL space. Ole Miss is at the forefront of that as well. The transfer portal, Ole Miss is absolutely in the forefront of that. And you can see with all the change that is happening in college athletics, they've done a really good job. So go to thegrovecollective.com/march to victory and sign up for your region and donate to Ole Miss today. Pretty good stuff. Daquan Wright potentially could be on the show a little bit later on this week. I'm getting very excited as it's getting closer. But I'm pretty fired up about that indeed. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen. Every dayers, we have player interviews. Maybe Daquan Wright slated for this weekend as we wait for the most anticipated football season at Ole Miss, maybe ever, honestly. And you can hear about it all right here. But for your second listen, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available on the free Fire TV Channels app. And for those of you on YouTube, we'll send you there right now. Hotty toddy, everyone.